Here's Gilgeous-Alexander. McCollum staying with him. Spins, gets inside. Left-handed off the glass. Oh, what a sweet move.
Giddey, tough spot. Backdoor. What a pass. What a play. And J-Dub picks the pocket of Trae Young. He'll take it himself.
This is New Dart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, Thunder fans? And welcome to the Uncontested Postgame Podcast Edition. I'm your host for tonight, Taylor Peterson. You can find me on Twitter, social media at Taylor_P15. And I am here as the Thunder lose 141-139 against the Golden State Warriors in extremely controversial fashion, which we will get into in the first game of the in-season tournament. And on a night, the Thunder debut their 23-24 City Edition uniforms and their very special edition in-season tournament court. Sorry, I almost said their City Edition court. That is not correct. There will be a City Edition court that will be debuting after the in-season tournament is over in December. I believe in like early January, maybe New Year's Eve even. It's off the top of my head. It is when the Thunder will be debuting their actual City Edition court, which is awesome. But honestly, again, kind of a controversial topic, but I thought that the court looked really good tonight. Myself and our guy Justin, OKC tracker, all over the uniforms and the courts, etc., etc. He was a little concerned, and I was as well, about the new jumbotron and the scoreboards, like all that lighting on that court, but it actually ended up looking pretty well, I thought, on the broadcast. So that was great to see. However, and honestly, there was a lot of good things, and we will get into that. However, the outcome was not what we were hoping for, even if the City Edition, or I keep saying that, the City Edition court, the in-season tournament court ended up looking pretty good live. We are, before I get any further, we are proudly part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. And if you don't already, please be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're on all of them. We're also on all social media platforms, especially YouTube, really trying to grow that as well. TikTok, if Twitter goes, or whatever you want to call it, x.com goes down, we're on all the different social media platforms such as Threads and Blue Sky. We'll be there. So be sure to subscribe to all those as well. Now, first of all, I'm getting a lot of comments in the chat. Greatly appreciate that. Please keep those coming. I'm going solo tonight, so I'll be sure to try and save a little bit of time here to be able to go through some of these. Really appreciate all of you all tuning in on a very fun game, but not the outcome that we were hoping for. Just really quick, I'm going to go ahead and rattle off my big takeaways before we kind of dive into the game. No Shai due to that I want to say right knee sprain, but I honestly can't even remember which knee it is. Regardless, Shai was out with a knee sprain. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to be long-term, but he was out tonight. And Thunder still go toe-to-toe with the fully healthy Golden State Warriors. I think that's a positive takeaway from tonight. Chet, aggressive early, which is becoming a theme. Dub, taking on the point guard role. Giddey takes over late. Similar to the Detroit game. Maybe another thing we're starting to see a little bit. Something to keep an eye on. And then my last one here is Cason Wallace is an incredibly impressive rookie and ready to play. So just kind of a couple of pregame notes here. No Shai due to his knee sprain, like I mentioned. J. Will comes back into the lineup after being out to start the season with that hamstring strain, I believe. And I mean, honestly, that was huge. We'll get into that as well. And then Cason gets the starting nod in place of Shai. I put that poll out on the Uncontested Twitter, and I think 71% of you were correct. It was Cason. But honestly, with Mark, you never know. I wouldn't have been surprised to see Poku out there starting. Like, that's just how Mark operates. And but he was a little more predictable, I think, for that with Cason, which makes a whole lot of sense given the Golden State matchup, wanting that perimeter defense, and it made a lot of sense. I'm not going to go super in depth here with the game, the quarter by quarter breakdown, but just kind of a couple of notes here as we go through the first four quarters. OKC started 6-6 from the field and benefited from a pair of Warriors turnovers, 14-8 early on in the game. Dort got a lot of fouls early. I believe he had 3 fouls super early. A lot of those, sorry, I shouldn't say a lot of those. 2 of those were pretty questionable, but that was obviously huge. I thought Giddey got subbed out early. That was really interesting. He got subbed out with about 6:15 to go in the first. J. Will came in early for Chet, and I thought he immediately played really well. Mitch, excuse me. Mitch just also got some minutes early with Shai being out. But the biggest thing here, Thunder shot 65% from the floor and 57% from 3, the best shooting quarter of the season for OKC, and yet they were still down. Second quarter, again, just kind of some highlights. The Thunder shoot 58% overall and 47% from 3. Also, we're 11 of 13 from the free throw line. Thunder were extremely efficient there in that first half. The difference here, though, is the Warriors were 13 of 25 from 3. They got more 3-point attempts off, and even if they weren't quite as efficient, like when you have a team like the Warriors, and they're at least hitting those shots at a high rate, they were. Doesn't matter how many shots basically they were in an offensive like face off with the Warriors, where I didn't think the Thunder did a very good job of getting out there on 3-point shooters. Again, you put J. Will in there, drop coverage. We talked a lot about that last season when J. Will was playing against the Warriors. It wasn't just J. Will, but obviously the Warriors were getting open for a lot of 3-point attempts, which was not ideal. That was led by none other than a former Thunder player this last season. Sorry. Man. And Sarge, which, he just torched the Thunder there in that second quarter, which is huge. And yet with no Shai, the Thunder only trailed 69-67.5. Dub led all Thunder players with only 7 field goal attempts. I wanted to mention that just because I thought that would be extremely fascinating to kind of see what those shot attempts, the distribution would look like without Shai in the lineup. And yet Dub led all Thunder players with only 7 field goal attempts. I thought that was fascinating because it was a very balanced effort for the Thunder. I kind of thought we might see more Josh Giddey, a little more Dub in that first half with no Shai. But it was a very balanced effort. Speaking of Dort, or actually, I don't think I mentioned Dort there. I meant to, but Dort was 3 of 3 from the floor, 2 of 2 from 3. Cason was 4 of 6 from the floor. He actually, again, only 1 less shot attempt than Dub did in that first half, which was fascinating. He was extremely efficient. I thought he played some really good defense. We'll talk a little bit about that. Giddey with only 4 shot attempts and the least amount of minutes of all the starters. I found that fascinating. However, that corrected itself there in the second half. We get into the third quarter. Chet comes out firing. It was so exciting. I mentioned Chet, kind of coming off these really great starts of the game. Particularly the last couple of games where he's played really well, has gotten a lot of opportunity early on, but it kind of seems like he trails off. That wasn't necessarily the case tonight when he comes out with the first 5 points of the half. Between bullying Steph, I believe he went baseline, or I can't even remember now, but just got like a ridiculous dunk after Steph was switched on to him. He bullies him. Another defender comes up on him. Doesn't matter. Chet finishes with a 2-handed slam, and then he drills a 3 the very next offensive possession. And that was it ended up being his first 20-point game of the season. 5 assists, if I could talk, for J-Dub. And at this point, which tied a season high, maybe something we'll get into as well. Like I mentioned, point J-Dub. And the Thunder had scored 100 points with only 3 players with 10 plus points, which is just like kind of a wild stat that I wanted to mention here. I thought the Warriors played some zone there in the third quarter, but J. Will, I mentioned him kind of struggling some defensively in the first half, which led to some Warriors open threes, but he was playmaking from the high post, which again, this is basic basketball. These were things that I was taught early on in grade school when my dad was coaching me. Like, if you have a zone, obviously moving the ball is important, but you flash somebody up to the high post, to the free throw line, you throw it to him, and if you're not able to penetrate that zone and kick out to shooters, you bring somebody up to the free throw line and hopefully they can play make. That was the case with J. Will, and it was extremely effective. I just found this really interesting. At the end of the third quarter, the Thunder were 39-66. That's 59% from the floor to the Warriors 36 of 69. Very nice. Again, they shot 52% from the floor, but very evenly distributed. Thunder were shooting 52% from the floor 52% from three. And it was all tied up heading into the third quarter. Just really great shooting through really the entirety of the game for the Thunder. Now, the fourth quarter is where things get really crazy. 8 straight for Giddey. This is where Josh comes in, just really kind of takes control, is really aggressive. He had a quote post-game where he mentioned that he needs to be more aggressive early on in the game, especially without Shai. I wish we would have seen more of that. But the fourth quarter, he comes in. Giddey gets, like I said, 8 straight, including two straight and ones back-to-back. I think this is the most aggressive Giddey, not only we've seen all game, but arguably maybe all season. Isaiah Joe gets a 4-point play. He hits the 3-point shot and gets fouled, which is incredible. Giddey continues to take over. 5 guys with 15 points for the Thunder there in that fourth quarter, which was just really exciting. I thought Cason Wallace had a really good stretch there. We had 2 straight finishes, which was huge when he's also like guarding some of the Warriors' best players on the other end of the floor. Things kind of, I'm just kind of like going through my notes here, and I'm trying to not just go play by play, but that fourth quarter was just absolutely insane. Let's see. So I have welcome to the in-season tournament because things were just absolutely crazy there down the stretch. Chet gets the ball at the top of the key, drives on Draymond. Blocking foul is called, but Draymond calls for the review. Thankfully, unsuccessful challenge. So Thunder ball. Chet hits both free throws, but Draymond throws an oop to Gary Payton to put them up 1. And then I thought Mark had a really good wrinkle, a really good out of bounds call. Chet's the inbounder on the sideline, out of bounds play. Not Josh. Josh was in the game, but it wasn't Giddey who threw that with no Shai. It was Chet throwing the ball out of bounds. Josh gets to the ball. He throws an entry pass to Lou, who gets fouled. Lou was just phenomenal. He really was. We'll get into that. Dort gets fouls. He misses 1 of 2 free throws, 16.4 seconds left. Things get crazy. Golden State Warriors call a timeout. Steph makes a shot. He drives, I believe, on Lou. And this is where things get extremely controversial. Draymond hits the rim. Josh Giddey hits the net. But it should have been, I mean, this, again, I think I had this tweet on our, on the Uncontested Twitter account, x.com, whatever you want to call it. But it was very obvious that it was goaltending on Draymond Green, who hit the rim. I mean, you look at the rule, multiple Thunder media have tweeted this out, but regardless of Josh hitting the net there, Draymond hit the rim. It should have just been a no basket. And yet they call the basket good. The Thunder end up losing in what was just a heartbreaker in the first game of the in-season tournament. I mentioned the tweet that I tweeted out from the Uncontested. It was a little bit petty, but I'm not going to lie. It very much felt like the NBA in-season tournament. They need this in-season tournament to go really well. And it has. You look at the scores across the board. Even with the bright, obnoxious courts, there were a lot of close games, including this one. However, the NBA is also coming up on a new, I don't even know what you want to call it, but basically a new TV deal. And it very much benefits them for this in-season tournament to do well. In-season tournament. Justin and I keep doing this. We want to call it the postseason or the playing games. It's not the playing games. It's the in-season tournament. It very much benefits the league for them to have high viewership for this in-season tournament because it will be marketed to these different outlets, the NBCs, the ABCs, the ESPNs, Disney's, et cetera, et cetera. Amazon even is trying to get in on this. Apple. It just makes you wonder a little bit, right? Again, this is me being a petty Thunder fan, and I appreciate all of you in the comments here agreeing with me. It just kind of makes you wonder, right? I think it would benefit the league for them to have one of their biggest markets and some of their biggest stars and the Golden State Warriors to advance in this tournament. So there's my little mini rant there on the ridiculous call to end the game when I think the Thunder should have been playing in overtime. Now, just some quick hitters, not big themes, but I thought these were pretty telling of the game as a whole. 139 points is tied for the third most in regulation in team history for the Thunder, and that is per Joe Masato of the Oklahoman. I thought that was a really good stat. The Thunder outshoot the Warriors 60% from the field to the Warriors 53%, but the Warriors got 9 more shot attempts. Again, that's not huge necessarily, but when you take that into consideration with what we talked about after the Pelicans game, where the Pelicans got so many more shot attempts off, even though they shot very poorly for the Thunder, like this is starting to become a little bit of a theme. Again, Shai didn't play. There's a lot of disclaimers with this particular game, but this is something to keep an eye on. I think it's really important. The Thunder shot 51% from 3 to the Warriors 45%, which is absurd. If you would have told me that stat before the game, I would have told you that the Thunder would have won. But the Warriors got 11 more 3-point attempts to my previous point. And the Thunder had 19 turnovers to the Warriors 15. That's a pretty high number. But again, only four additional turnovers, but the Warriors had 30 points off turnovers to the Thunder's 18. And again, I sound like a broken record when I say this on every single podcast over the past 2 years, but this Thunder team is at their best when they're pushing the ball in transition. That starts on the defensive end of the floor when they're getting deflections and steals. And I'm not sure the Thunder really did a great job of that tonight. And again, when you don't have a player like SGA who's been playing really well defensively and gets a lot of those deflections and if you want to call them stocks or whatever, the steals and the blocks, the Thunder certainly missed that with that point of attack defense, but I still thought they did a pretty good job overall without Shai. Regardless, I think that number is pretty telling. Again, Warriors had 30 points off turnovers to the Thunder's 18. That'll do it. So let's see. I'm going to just really quickly go through some of these most recent comments. See if there's anything. Oh, no Lou takeaways tonight. I have that Smoot. I'm going to get into Lou. I kind of snuck that in here later. HBO, I think, has some stock in this season tournament too. That is Smoot. I'm going to go ahead and put that up here. I think that's a really good point. Again, there's so many different networks that are trying to get in on this in-season tournament. Kind of going back to what I mentioned with maybe the NBA would do better with a really, one of their bigger markets being there in Vegas here next month, I believe, in those finals. But again, that's my tinfoil hat. Let's go ahead and get into these takeaways. Again, no Shai, and if the Thunder go toe-to-toe with the fully healthy Warriors. That's extremely exciting. Even if the Thunder did lose, like this is kind of some sunshine pumping here. My Thunder colored lenses are on, but Chet, 24 points on only 9 shot attempts. Like, again, I'd really like to see his field goal attempts go up throughout the season. I think he deserves it. Chet was fantastic again. Lou had 12 field goal attempts. J-Dub had 12 field goal attempts. Giddey ended up with 15 after his extremely aggressive fourth quarter. Cason Wallace 10. Again, those are just the starters. And you look at the bench, and it was pretty evenly distributed. But the fact that the Thunder were able to do that without Shai is just really, really impressive. And I think, I think that's a really important disclaimer, right? When you don't have your All-NBA top 5 MVP voting from last season, that kind of player playing in this game, like I mentioned, when the Warriors are finally fully healthy, right? Draymond is finally back like that. There's a lot of reasons to still be extremely excited about this game, even if we were really frustrated with the final result and how the game ended up. Now, speaking of Chet, I thought he was extremely aggressive early, and this is becoming a theme. Like I mentioned, he's coming out. I think he had, I don't even remember what I said. I think he at least had the first 5 points. With the trailing threes, the way he's able, the pick and roll, when we have all these different creators, like Chet just fits into this offense perfectly. We've talked so much about, and national media have talked so much about his impact on the defensive end of the floor. I think guys like Moses Moody, Gary Payton, pregame, they both mentioned, the biggest impact of having Chet for the Thunder is his defensive impact. But it goes without being said at this point that Chet is playing extremely well on the offensive end of the floor as well and fitting in perfectly. I thought Chet had another really great game. Like I mentioned, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 of 2 from 3, 8 of 8 from the free throw line, which maybe is my favorite stat of all. We've talked so much about 3-4 seasons, probably 3 seasons ago, we were talking about the next step for Shai into superstardom is to get to the line more and to make those free throws. And obviously we saw that last season. That's something we want to see more of from Dub. Dub talked a lot about when he was on JJ Redick's podcast, The Old Man, the Three, trying to get to the line more. Josh Giddey, we talked so much about that, especially with his play in FIBA. But Giddey was 2 of 2 from the free throw line, which is, extremely efficient, obviously, but only 2 attempts at the free throw line, even when he's being way more aggressive there in the fourth quarter. Dub was 2 of 5 from the free throw line, which isn't great. He needs to be much better, more efficient from the free throw line if he's getting there. But again, only 5 attempts from the free throw line. Chet was 8 of 8. We need to be talking about that way more. I thought that was just, again, I cannot talk. Only 1 block, which is weird for Chet after he's been so extremely efficient on the defensive end of the floor. But that's because the Warriors don't really drive to the rim. I don't have those stats pulled up in front of me. But again, this is a team who the Golden State Warriors who really perform. They're at their best when they're driving, kicking out to open shooters and hitting outside shots. Like, it makes sense that Chet would have had as many blocks because Chet, I almost said Chet, Curry, others, they aren't getting to the rim nearly as much as some of the other opponents that we've seen the Thunder play against so far. All that to say, Chet was fantastic. And for him to have 24 points, not almost, but he was flirting with triple-double, right? To only have 9 field goal attempts, I really want to see that go up. We have got to get Chet more involved offensively. One thing I mentioned, I think after we did our group podcast Wednesday, after they played the Pelicans, is it definitely seems like Chet's still trying to get his legs under him, right? He starts out hot. Again, he played really well in the fourth quarter, which is great to see. But I think he is still trying to get kind of his legs under him and the grind of the NBA season, trying to get some conditioning. Maybe those shot attempts go up when he's a little more conditioned here later in the season. But regardless, we got to get Chet more involved. Moving on to my next big takeaway here, Dub taking on a point guard role. It was not what I expected. Honestly, like I mentioned the the Old Man, the Three podcast that he did. And he mentioned some really interesting comments there with JJ, trying to fit within the flow of the offense and playing alongside guys like Shai and Josh. Without Shai, though, I thought Dub would be a little more aggressive. Again, 8 of 12 from the floor, 18 points. That's fantastic. But that's kind of what I expect from Dub at this point, even when Shai is playing. And the fact that he was a little more aggressive scoring the ball was a little disappointing to me. But he did play within the flow of the offense, and he really was the primary point guard there outside the fourth quarter when Josh kind of started to take over. Had 8 assists, which I believe is it's certainly a season high. I need to look and see if that's a career high. I thought Dub did a really good job facilitating. He had some great passes created for others with his driving to the rim. And one thing, again, to take into consideration is without Shai on the floor, I keep mentioning that, which again is a big disclaimer. But Dub obviously had, I think the Warriors had their main defensive assignment on Dub. And so we saw a lot of Andrew Wiggins, not Aaron Wiggins. That was really confusing. Andrew Wiggins and Aaron Wiggins were on the floor at the same time. And it was really funny because as soon as that happened there, I believe towards the end of the first quarter, Michael Cage immediately made a comment of it. And I started laughing because Michael Cage is the analyst who would just, mess it up over and over. Shout out to Michael Cage. You did a really good job not messing those up, not getting those mixed up. But all that being said, I was a little disappointed that Dub didn't score more, but I thought he did a really good job facilitating. And we kind of saw some of those point guard, skills that he mentioned growing up when he was, especially at Santa Clara. So Dub maybe not scoring quite as much as we would have wanted him to without Shai, but I thought he did well in that main point guard role. And I found that interesting when you have Dub and Giddey on the floor at the same time. Just kind of goes back to what I've been thinking about over these past handful of games where Dub is kind of coming in, leading the second unit, not so much Giddey. It's just kind of something I'm keeping an eye on. Speaking of Giddey takes over late, similar to the Detroit game. I mentioned that earlier. I think he had 8 straight points in the fourth, was extremely aggressive, making the right reads, getting to the rim. I thought Giddey was fantastic. I don't honestly have a lot of things to really mention here other than again, Giddey, I wish he would do this sooner. And that's something that he mentioned post-game. He said, I need to be more aggressive sooner, doing what I've been doing here in the past couple of fourth quarters and getting to the rim more and creating for my teammates. He ends up with 18 points, just like Dub, and ends up with the most shot attempts on the entire team, 8 of 15 from the floor, extremely efficient. But the thing with Giddey is that outside shot. I mean, 0-3 from 3, only 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Like, he's got to get to the rim more. He's got to get those fouls. And I don't know, I'm a little torn on this. I think in the fourth quarter, he was very aggressive. He didn't get those foul calls because he was getting to the rim without contact and was finishing around the rim. Before that, though, he was continuing to rely on that floater, not really getting to the rim and initiating contact. And I just really would like to see a more aggressive Giddey. That being said, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. You cannot knock Giddey for this loss. I mean, I thought he played fantastic, especially there in the fourth quarter down the stretch. I mean, that is everything you would want from him. Hopefully we see that moving forward. Like I said, like he mentioned post-game, hopefully that happens a little sooner in the game, and it'll be really interesting and something I'm continuing to keep an eye on. I mean, I know Shai and Josh can coexist. I'm not saying they can't, but they're still trying to fill each other out, it seems to me. And Dub can be thrown in that category as well. Like, they're still trying to figure out the pecking order here. And that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Now, I'll try and go a little quicker through these last couple of ones. Cason Wallace, again, just incredibly impressive. He comes in his first start in his rookie career, only 4 games in to his rookie season, and he's ready to play. He has some incredible offensive possessions where he was cutting back door, just making the right reads off ball. He doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands, and it is able to perform offensively. I also thought he did a decent job. I mean, again, when you're a rookie going up against guys like Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, when you have those kind of assignments, I think he was on Andrew Wiggins a handful of times. Like, that's going to be tough. But overall, I thought he did a really good job offensively and defensively. And for him to be so impactful in that starting role without Shai as a rookie, again, early on in his rookie career, like, not enough positive things can be said about Cason Wallace, even if he did maybe like miss an occasional defensive assignment, defensive rotation. Overall, Cason just continues to be really, really impressive. And then just some perspective, J. Will comes back, which is a huge improvement. I thought, again, J. Will struggles defensively. We know his defensive weaknesses. We saw this actually against the Warriors a couple of different times last season, and we continue to see that with his inability to be able to guard on the perimeter. But overall, I thought J. Will was really impactful for this team, having him back. We saw him with Chet, not a ton, but when he would come in for Chet, I mean, he was incredibly impactful, just having that physicality down low. He missed his outside shots, which I think will start to go in when he gets his legs back under him. But overall, I thought J. Will had a really good game, and it's exciting to see him come back and the impact he's already having coming back into the line. You add Kenrich Williams, who's not playing right now. Like, even without Shai, if you have Kenrich and J. Will, it's hard to see the Thunder team losing if you have the Kenrich Williams that you had last season. So that's a little more sunshine pumping there. And that's without Bertans, right? Like, we're continuing to see, and again, that's not a knock on the coaching staff. That's not a knock on the organization. Ousmane Dieng comes in, they're trying to get younger players more playing time rather than just throwing in a longtime vet in Bertans to see if he can get some spacing for this team. They're continuing to focus on that player development and critical, important moments and important games like this game against one of the better teams in the league in the Western Conference and the Golden State Warriors. And we're seeing these guys improve. For example, Josh Giddey taking on a bigger role there in the fourth quarter. J-Dub really kind of getting things going there after a slow start in the first half. Like, I think that's really important for these young guys to develop rather than just throwing in veterans like Bertans and, just trying to win the game. I think long-term that will pay dividends. Now, you guys have asked a lot about Dort. Actually, I did not mention Lou Dort, and I should have. So we'll go ahead and just mention Lou Dort here. He's been fantastic. And what I think the most exciting thing that I've seen throughout the entirety of the season is just he's more reserved. He's driving to the rim when he needs to, but we're seeing him spot up in the corner way more. Again, I don't have these stats pulled up in front of me. Solo podcast. I can't tell you his percentages from the corner or, excuse me, his even like his percentages of shots in the corner versus elsewhere. But I thought he was in kind of that perfect role in the first half. And the second half is when we just saw him go absolutely crazy. Now, this is where I could go on my Valley Sports rant, where they kicked the majority of us here in the Metro out of watching that third quarter stretch where Dort just kind of took over and went toe-to-toe with Steph Curry. I would have loved to seen that, but unfortunately, Valley Sports did not allow that. Thankfully, I was able to get back into the app after like signing out and signing back in, and finally was able to catch the end of the third quarter and the majority of the fourth. All that being said, Lou Dort, I mean, without Shai, I mean, he arguably was, maybe not even arguably, I think he probably was the most impactful player for the Thunder. The fact that he had 3 super early fouls in that first quarter, still was able to finish the game. He goes 9 of 12 from the floor, 6 of 6 from 3. 6 of 6 from 3. I'm going to let that hang out there for a little bit. That's everything we would want and more. 5 of 7 from the free throw line. Like, Dort was phenomenal. And that's offensively. Keep in mind, he's running around, trying to go around screens, trying to draw offensive fouls against the Warriors when he's guarding Steph Curry as his primary assignment, also going against guys like Klay Thompson, etc. Like, not enough can be said about Lou Dort's game tonight. But we're not going to see this every night from Lou. We're going to see more like we saw the past couple of games. And honestly, that is the perfect Lou Dort. That fits perfectly within this offense. 5 rebounds as well. Like a team that's really struggling with rebounds this season. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, Lou Dort having 5 of those. I mean, again, he being one of the, I mean, he's obviously big. We know that. But being one of the shorter players on this team, like, again, not enough can be said about Lou Dort and the impact he had on this team. And I think those are probably, I cheated and threw in Lou Dort as another big takeaway. But I'm going to go ahead. I mean, we've had a ton of comments, and I really, really appreciate them. I'm going to try and go through them pretty quickly. Then we'll go ahead and get out of here. We got Bedlam tomorrow. I know a lot of you all will be excited about that. OSU football. I will be there in attendance, which will be really exciting. And then the Thunder will play again. See if I can pull this up. Apologies. On Monday against the Hawks, which will be another really fun, interesting matchup. Hopefully Shai's ready to go. They get a couple days rest. And again, the Hawks are playing at home. The Hawks are playing in OKC. A really important home stretch here for the Thunder. They haven't taken advantage of it necessarily, but I think it's going to be really nice for this Thunder team to have a couple of days off before they play the Hawks again at home, and hopefully we see Shai. So going through some of these comments, just a lot of that was a fun game. The NBA is rigged. 12-minute report is going to be wild. Got some court comments. Our guy Kieran says, I like the courts. I agree. The court, especially in comparison to some of the ones we saw like Indiana, for example, today, I thought the court looked great. Like I mentioned, Justin and I were both a little worried about what that, the reflection from the Jumbotron and all the different lighting, but it ended up looking really well. Let's see. Smoot, our guy Smoot says, Draymond averages 2 offensive goaltends, 8 legal screens, and 4 technical fouls, but he plays for the Warriors, so they don't count. Triple, single, strikes again. Honestly, a really good point. Draymond and Steve Kerr were just letting the refs have it. And if that were Daigneault or Daigneault, and let's say Dub, like there would have been way more technical fouls called. That's something else to mention. Let's see. Joseph keeps giving me a hard time. Taylor's got to stop drinking when he hosts the show. Joseph, I'm going solo. That's what happens when I go solo. It's a lot of rambling. What else? The amount of offensive goaltending. I'm just trying to kind of scroll through these. They need to stop having J-Dub being point. He turns the ball over too much. That's from Joseph. 6 turnovers is not good. I did not mention the turnovers for Dub. That's a really good point. However, I would argue that Dub will be at his... this is kind of like what I mentioned when you're not playing Bertans. Some of these veterans, and you're letting guys like Ousmane Dieng. And it's not just like those guys getting those minutes. It's also these younger guys that kind of the core pieces that we think of in Chet and J-Dub. I understand that 6 turnovers is not good, but this is where Dub's going to grow and improve when Shai's out. it's just going to make him better in the long term. So it may suck in the short term when we lose a game like we did tonight. But overall, I thought Dub did a pretty good job taking over that Shai role. And I think it's going to pay dividends moving forward. Valley Sports is so bad. Yes. According to NBA, Dort, I'm not really sure what you meant by that, Smoot. Anyways, a lot of good comments. I really appreciate them. Apologies for kind of rambling through those, but I appreciate all of you tuning in. Again, a really tough one tonight against the Golden State Warriors. However, we have a couple days off, and then Monday we go head-to-head with the Hawks back at home in Paycom. One quick aside, I thought Paycom was fantastic tonight. I was just watching from TV, but it seemed like it was packed out. I think they said it was another sold-out crowd, which is phenomenal, similar to the home opener against the Denver Nuggets on Sunday, this past Sunday. So shout out to all of you all who were in attendance and packing out Paycom. Obviously, there's going to be Warriors fans everywhere. We know that. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but I'm going long. We won't get into that. But I thought Paycom was fantastic. It definitely had the home court advantage there, which was huge for a big matchup and in the first in-season tournament game. So shout out to all the Thunder fans that were there in attendance. Hopefully, not similar against the Hawks. But before then, we will have you all covered with our full group podcast on Sunday. We'll be breaking down the past week of Thunder basketball. It's a ton to break down. A lot of stuff league-wide. So be sure to tune in on Sunday. Thank you all again for tuning in for this one. Even though the Thunder lost, it was a great post game with all of you all tuning in. And as always, Thunder up.